third episode of the third series, Time for Trouble, is based off of the story Doubleheader from the Railway series book, The 8 Famous Engines. This is another one of those episodes that was originally planned for the second series, picking up following the events of Gordon Goes Foreign, another cancelled episode, but they decided to push it further to this series. We've had a whole series to wait for this adaptation of the story, so how does it work? It is a very busy time for the Fat Controller's engines, as the island of Sodor has a lot of visitors. The Fat Controller schedules more trains to cope with the demand, with Gordon in particular having to make more journeys than usual. Gordon is eager to ensure all of his trains are on time and works harder than ever to make sure this happens. Things are so hectic that at times Gordon has no sooner dropped off one load of passengers that he has to take another. Gordon doesn't mind this, however, and does his increased workload without fuss. Despite this, the Fat Controller soon decides that Gordon deserves a rest and James will take the express instead. James is delighted at the chance to show off and be as fast as Gordon. One day in the yard, James boasts to Toby about how important he is and how he is never late. The Fat Controller arrives and tells Toby that it is time for him to go to the works to have his worn parts replaced. Toby is upset at having to go for repairs and asks if Henrietta could come with him, but the Fat Controller states that he needs all coaches to be available. Percy promises to look after Henrietta while Toby's gone. Toby puffs away to the works on the main line, but he starts making some clanking sounds. Since he has a smaller water tank than most other engines, he soon feels thirsty. He is glad when he starts to approach Lower Tidmouth and stops to take on water, as he and his driver do not think it will be a problem. However, the Cinnamon, who is new to the job, has never met Toby and orders them to continue on and clear the line for James and the express. Toby sadly leaves and struggles to nap food to replenish, but runs out of steam and is left stranded on the main line. Toby's fireman knows that they have to warn James about the blockage on the line, and Percy comes up with Henrietta. Although she hates leaving Toby stranded, Percy cheers her up by saying that she is helping Toby by carrying the fireman to warn James. The fireman reaches the station in time and tells James's crew what has happened. The Cinnamon apologises for causing the trouble while James is angry, knowing this will make him late, and he fumes when his driver tells him that he will need to push Toby as well as pull the express. James finds Toby and gives him a bump before starting to push him along.
Get on, you!
James works harder than ever, having to push and pull his train at the same time, and by the time he reaches Knapford he is exhausted. Some children on the platform see this, and one boy jokes as the express is late and James is tired. It must mean that he could not pull the express alone and needed Toby's help. Toby assures James that the children only tease him, but James does not find it amusing at all and sarcastically laughs as he vanishes in a cloud of steam, while Toby just smiles. As I said, the episode was meant to be adapted for the second series as well as Gordon Goes Foreign. But since Gordon Goes Foreign was cancelled and never put into production due to budget constraints, they had to improvise and come up with a new reason for Gordon needing a rest from those express works rather than just going to London. And having several visitors and scheduling more trains for Gordon to pull is a really good reason for him to need a rest and James to replace him. And it makes sense to have James do the express routes for this time since he's pulled the express before, and he was given the opportunity to pull the express sometimes to give Gordon a rest back in series 1. This is another one of those episodes I enjoyed rewatching as a kid because I love Gordon's opening scene, how grand and special he looks while pulling the express. And I also love seeing James being his same old egotistical self, boasting to Toby about how important he feels he is, only to have it be thrown back in his face by the end of the story. It's also a really nice change of pace to have an episode focused on Toby for a while, since we haven't had a Toby story for a while now. And I assume that the small water tank thing Toby has must have been a huge thing and must have been a norm for tram engines at the time. I don't know for certain because I never really read on the history of tram engines, but it must have been a thing back then since Wilbur Awdry wrote it in his original story. And it's also worth pointing out that in the original UK dub, the additional line of James saying,
"Look at me, I'm the smartest, most useful engine on the line,"
is reused in a later episode. But we'll get to that episode when we get to that episode. And I adore the voice that Michael Angelis gave James in the third series. He gives him this loud Scouse accent that really does suit the character really well. And he does a great job of showing it in the early narration of this episode and the other episodes that were on the VHS tapes.
"You know, little Toby," he boasted, "I'm an important engine, everyone knows it. I'm as regular as clockwork, never late, always on time." "Says you," replied Toby. James was fuming when he heard the news. "I'm going to be late." "Now, James," said his driver, "you'll have to push Toby." "What, me?" Me push Toby and pull my train too? Get on, you!
And it's worth pointing out that in the later narrations of the episodes, he could be quite inconsistent with James's voice.
You know, little Toby, he boasted, I'm an important engine. Everyone knows it. I'm as regular as clockwork, never late, always on time. Says you. James was fuming when he heard the news. I'm going to be late. What, me? Me? Push Toby and pull my train too? Get on, you!
But here, this is where his big Scouse accent really came through. And I love every second of it. Time for Trouble is another fun episode that doesn't have any crash scenes or runaways or chase scenes. It's just a fun episode where stuff happens. And it's a nice way to have Toby have the spotlight again. It's another episode that I highly recommend checking out if you haven't seen it for a while. You'll get a nice little story with Toby, and it's great to see James being his usual egotistical self. It's definitely worth a watch.